This is Austin Real Estate Investing.
Austin Real Estate Investing.
We'll be discussing real estate investing in Austin, Texas, and bringing you experts from all different sectors of the real estate game. Your host, Jordan Moorhead, is a real estate agent and investor in Austin and is here to help you get started or to build your portfolio and explore new strategies.
Hey guys, this is Jordan Moorhead and this is Austin Real Estate Investing. Today I've got Aaron Amuchastegui here and he's going to tell us all about his experience here in Austin. Hey Aaron, how are you?
Hey, good afternoon, Jordan. I'm glad I could get on here to chat with you. I think it's awesome what you've been doing and just trying to focus on where you're investing. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for coming on, man. So real quick, tell everybody who you are and how you were involved with real estate investing.
Yeah, it's such an open-ended question, right? So so I'm Aaron Amuchastegui. I live in Austin. And when I first started investing out here in Central Texas, I wasn't living in Austin. I was living in other states and I would fly out here once a month and buy houses. And the biggest draw to the Austin area at the time was houses were inexpensive and you could buy a house for $100,000 and you could rent it for $1,200. And in a lot of the outskirt areas of Austin, like 30, 40 miles around, from the city center, we'd say I'm like, prices will never go up out here, but at least I'll get some really good cash flow. And what we've seen in the last 6 months, last year, prices go up everywhere right now. So I got really lucky on that nice, safe bet. And it turned out better than I thought. I grew up in construction. My dad was a builder. I worked for a home builder in 2005, height of the housing boom. I ran an operation in Southern California of building production houses. So my experience was building new homes. Housing market crashed. I started buying foreclosures in 2009. Did flips for a lot of years. And now I do, for every 10 houses I buy, it's usually 9 of them I'll keep as rentals and 1 of them I'll flip. I still love flipping. Flipping is the most fun thing I've ever done. It's not always it's a really good way for short cash. I'm thinking more about long game stuff right now. So on occasion I'm like, oh, I should keep that instead of sell it. Oh, I should keep that instead of sell it. But it's always a kind of painful experience because flipping is fun. Fast money is fun. And it's almost like the grown-up version is renting instead for me right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you were out of state and correct me if I'm wrong, you were in California and you started investing in Austin here, and you guys wrote a great book called Bidding to Buy. And I think that's probably some of how you got here. You started buying courthouse auction.
Yeah. So 2005 to 2009, it's like a home builder at the height of the housing boom in California. And then near 2008, we had to lay off 70 people. There was like 5 of us left because all of these new homes we had built at the time were upside down. Housing market had driven up, then it started crashing. Rates were getting raised. All sorts of things caused that crash. In 2009, we were scrambling to try to figure out what to do. We couldn't build new houses anymore. We were trying to buy foreclosures on the MLS, and it was like we couldn't get into that business. Everybody was doing it. We discovered courthouse step investing, where you buy a foreclosure on the courthouse steps before it becomes an REO. When we started that in 2009, there was 3 people at the courthouse in Sacramento doing it against us. Hundreds of houses selling. And only 3 of us there. We would all show up and spend whatever money we showed up with that day. We were never going home with it. It was like we would buy houses until we ran out of money. And then we're like, okay, we ran out of money. And then we'd go find more and we'd come back tomorrow. It was not very competitive. There wasn't any books on how to do it. When I, in like 2009, 2012, bought and sold over 1,000 houses on the courthouse steps within that like 100-mile radius of Austin. Around 2012, every year more people were getting into it. But when I got put out of business in 2012 out there, instead of 3 people bidding on hundreds of houses, this is every single day. In Texas, it happens once a month. In California, it happens every day. Instead of 3 people bidding on 100 houses, there was like 100 people bidding on 3 houses. So instead of getting deals on stuff, it was selling for way too much. My long story short is I was flying out to Texas to go. I bought an apartment out here as a fluke. I was flying out to check on another apartment that an agent had sent me for sale. I saw that it was scheduled for foreclosure. I flew out to buy it at auction. When I got out here, I got scared. I got cold feet because I hadn't successfully bought at auction for like a year or 2 at the time. But when that happened, I looked around, and after the apartment sold, behind me, this trustee was selling off houses and nobody was bidding on. So he sold like 30 houses behind me, like 50 grand a piece. And I'm from California where the houses were $500 $1 million a piece that I was bidding on. And I thought, oh my God, this is another market. So next month I flew out, I drove houses, did the title on them. And it was just like it was in California in 2009. There was only a couple people there bidding. There was a lot of houses going to sale, and no competition in that. And yeah, so that's why I started coming out to Texas. It was really because auctions were my niche. It was a unique place where it felt like it was underdeveloped and became my focus.
So it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, it sounds like you kind of got started here on accident. You were buying an apartment here or looking at an apartment here and came here and saw all these great opportunities. But so how about now? I know you live in Austin now. Why do you continue to invest in the Austin area now when prices have gone up so much, like you just said?
Yeah, it was totally accident. Like totally came out here on accident. And it became like I would come more and more. And I still wasn't planning on living here. But one of the things I noticed when I got put out of business in 2012 is I'd flipped a bunch of houses and I only had cash to show for it. And when that market changed, I wanted to be able to keep houses instead. So Austin became really good kind of long-term bets. It was still a place where even though auctions are getting more competitive, they're not as competitive as other parts of the real estate industry out here right now. Like if you put a house on MLS, there's going to be 10 offers on it. At auction, even though there's less houses going to auction right now, there's still not 10 people bidding on every house. It's just still a little bit tougher of a business. But I mean, man, I am very bullish on Austin long-term. People are moving here all the time. There's a huge kind of premium to it. The weather is extreme. So I'd say the only downside is there's certain times of the year where the weather is not fun. But like right now, it's springtime. Man, it's going to be 85 degrees this afternoon. I can go golfing. Like it's there's some seasons that I do like that are longer here than they are in other places that I've lived. Businesses, Texas is very business friendly. California was very not business friendly. If you had employees in California and you paid them $20 an hour, it would cost you $40 an hour to employ them. It was just that much with all of the extra taxes and everything. So anytime you paid somebody, if you're going to pay somebody a $50,000 salary, it was going to cost you $100,000 a year to do it. Wow. And it was just really hard. A lot of little business things were hard. Texas is not like that. Texas is way more business friendly. Austin has a lot of growth happening, and the more growth that comes into a city, whereas they're trying to they're building out the soccer teams now, other things. So a lot of fun, exciting things happening here, which will cause more people to want to live here. Mm-hmm. The more people that want to live here, the more kind of amenities and other things they'll grow out. So that's why I'm big on Austin now. That's why I live here now. I still don't get to buy too many houses in the heart of Austin because the heart of Austin is the most expensive. Mm-hmm. And the heart of Austin will be great for flips, not as good for rental cash flow, great for long-term equity plays.
So we're, you pointed out a lot of good insight here. There are great strategies to invest in real estate or make money in real estate in Austin right now if you're in the Austin area. So if you're 15, 20 minutes from downtown, it's a great time to flip. It's a great time to build new. It's probably not the best time to invest in single family rental properties in downtown Austin. But I know you've got some other strategies that are working for rental properties in the Austin area. What initially attracted you to this longer term buy and hold? So I know you were making a lot of money building. Sounds like you've done a ton of flips, but now it seems like the majority of what you're doing is on the long term buy and hold. So, from what you said, 90% of what you do is for the long run.
Yeah. And that was part of what I learned from the story before. Like I had flipped 1,000 houses. I had made a ton of money, but when all of a sudden there was 100 people at auction, I had tons of employees and company cars. My overhead was really high. And when I stopped being able to buy houses, I lost all that money that I had made. Mm-hmm. And I remember looking back going, I flipped 1,000 houses and I have very little to show for it. If I would have just kept 100 of those, I'd be set for life. Yeah. And that became that mindset. So when I started going to auctions again, it was like, hey, let's just not flip everything for the short term. Flip enough to pay the bills, to have the lifestyle. But whenever I can afford to keep something for the long term, that's really just that idea of we call it horizontal income, like retirement type income. If you buy a house for $100,000 and you rent it for $1,200, you get an $800 loan on it. Every month you make $400 on that house. Now that isn't enough to really, write home about. And maybe it's $200 you make on that house. But if you buy 3 houses every single month and you do that, and I've been doing that since 2015, right now I've got a few hundred of them. And so when you get to start adding up, a few $100 a piece and you have a few hundred houses, then that monthly income becomes pretty significant. Even though at a time it was like I did it every single month since 2015, where I'd be buying some, and some months I'd buy 15 or 20, and some months I'd buy 1 or 2, but it was just being consistent and consistently getting more. So now it has added up. I know when people get started in renting, they're like, well, you don't make very much money in this. It's like, well, no, not really. And then every once in a while you get the big old bonus. So these areas that are outskirts of Austin, which are the tertiary, more affordable places, kind of the worker areas. I bought there saying, hey, this house will never gain in value, but I'm going to make my $200 a month. And I wanted to get away from the crazy ups and downs and get that $200 a month. And then but in the last couple of years, I've gotten super lucky. The houses that were never supposed to appreciate are worth twice what they were when I bought them. And so it was like this crazy bonus. Real estate is one of those few things that you could actually have a total solid investment, making your $200 or $300 a month, and maybe you'll get lucky, and all of a sudden a house you bought for $100,000 will now be worth $200,000, and you're like, whoa, phenomenal, fantastic. When you add that up to 20 houses, 30 houses, a few hundred houses, it's pretty cool. So now there's Austin, there's like a few different strategies, and I would like to get more into I think there's going to be anything that is a higher end product in Austin. If you find something on the water, or these real high-end neighborhoods, these really, really big giant houses, you think the people that are coming to spend a lot of money in Texas are coming from these other states. So if you could find some of those areas where the neighborhoods resemble the giant ones from there, the $1 million, the $2 million, the $3 million houses in Austin, I am super bullish on those right now. And so I've been trying to look at ways that I could buy some of those and keep them for a certain amount of time. Now, if you rent one of those, you're actually gonna have like a negative cash flow. You might your mortgage might be $6,000 or $7,000 on it, and you might be renting it for $4,000 or $5,000 a month. Now that's a bet. That's a risky bet. Not what I usually do, but it is a strategy that for people that started investing in San Francisco 20 years ago really paid off. They would buy real estate. They would take negative cash flow every month. They'd put a little bit into it every month. And then every, couple of years, they'd make an extra $1 million. It's like they're losing $10,000 a month, but they're making $1 million a year. And so I think that Austin is going to get there on some different products. So the really high-end, unique stuff, I would like to find some ways to buy some more of that. But that's like single-family rental stuff. And maybe there's even some more affordable stuff. There's some $400,000 and $500,000 rentals near downtown, like 5 miles south of Zilker downtown. Like there's some on the market right now. They'll only rent for a couple $1,000s a month. So they're not quite cash flowing if you have to get a loan on them. But again, if you're looking at some of those areas long-term, you're like 4 or 5 years from now with the demand that's coming in, you might not make any normal cash flow, but if prices double again over 5 years, then you're going to get this 20%, return on your money. The other thing that's throwing that in right now is kind of the belief in future of inflation. When a lot of money is getting printed, dollars are worth less. And one of the strategies that I'm trying to put into place right now is debt. So the more debt you take on with inflation, I'm sure you've probably talked about it on here a lot, but it's kind of like everyone says, what I used to be able to buy for $1. Like I used to be able to buy this for $1. And now I used to be able to get a Whopper for $1. And now a Whopper is $3, right? Like that's the example of natural inflation that happens. But the coolest thing about real estate loans is you can buy a house you can buy that $400,000 house in Austin. You can have a $2,500 a month payment for it. And maybe you're losing $500 a month right now, but next year, you're going to raise that rent from $2,000 to $2,200. The next year, you're going to raise it from $2,200 to $2,400. Every year, you're going to raise it another $200. So 3 or 4 years from now, you're going to be making $3,000 a month on that house. The mortgage is now $2,500. And later, the money is going to be worth less. So making a $3,000 payment 5 years from now is not going to feel as painful as making a $3,000 payment today. So doing some long-term term stuff because of the amount of inflation I think is going to be caused from all the stimulus getting, any long-term interest loan. You're going to be paying it back with cheaper money later. The ways that you can make money right now that I'm finding my most success with. So I am bullish on closer to Austin, just knowing that you get less cash flow with those. And so you need to have more money, or it is a little bit riskier with the time when the music stops in the game of musical chairs, if it stops. For the longest time, I thought we were going to see a crash soon. I think right now there's so much government intervention that I don't know how long I'm going to make a bet for, but I feel like a year from now, stuff is going to be worth more than it is today. And if you always just kind of assess like where are we headed with that. Lately, I've been buying a lot of new build construction stuff when it comes to market. New build duplexes, small new build single family stuff that doesn't make the same. So the difference would be if I buy a new home, if I buy a resale house for $100,000, I used to be able to rent it for $1,200, but right now the market's a little tighter. I could still buy a new house for $100,000 and rent it for $1,000. Mm-hmm. And by say new, it's not like a resale. I could buy a house for $100,000, rent it for $1,000, that 1% rule. If you're getting a new construction house, you for every $100,000 you spend, you're only going to be able to rent it for maybe $800 or $900. But so you're not making as high a rent on it, but at new construction, you got a warranty for a couple of years. You're not going to have any of those extra expenses. A house that's 20 years old, you might have $100 or $200 a month in fix-up. The thing that people always forget, the new homes, you don't have it. So you get a little bit more aggressive on new homes. For those, your rent can be a little bit lower, but it's much easier to manage. And right now, the more houses we get, the more we're trying to figure out how do we make this easier. We don't need the same amount of cash flow anymore. Now we need it to be easier. So I found a great strategy in finding, smaller home builders, and not the Lennars, not the KBs. It's really tough to get a deal from a national builder, but some of the smaller ones that are just coming to market. The nationals also have enough money that they can hold 50 houses and not care. They have the construction to it. Smaller builders have a loan enough to do their 6 or 8 house release. And they aren't going to get a loan to do their next development until they get those in escrow. So those are the guys that are unique in the sense of I said, hey, I'll buy all 8 of these right now. They can now get approved to do their next construction project. It's a bigger value to them than it is to the big builders. So you find small builders that are doing projects of 5, 10, 20, making offers on those right away and turning those into rentals. And, it's just going to be a lot easier. There's going to be less. The toughest part about renting is the maintenance right now, because there's such a high demand for housing that we do not have occupancy issues that we had a year ago.
Have you wanted to be part of GoBundance, the tribe of millionaires, but just haven't hit that millionaire status yet? Well, now you can, not even being a millionaire, by joining our new program, GoBundance Emerge. My name's Jamie Gruber, creator of GoBundance Emerge and member of the GoBundance community. And now you can join. GoBundance.com/emerge. GoBundance.com/emerge. Use code Jordan for $100 off this 12-week goal-setting program and mastermind that'll propel you to being a whole life millionaire.
Yeah. No, that's a very interesting strategy, because you're taking their problem, which is I need to sell these houses to get the loan to do the next one, saying, hey, I would love to buy all of your houses at this right price for me. I'll buy them all. Here you go. You can get started on the next one. It's really where the money is made as a builder. A lot of times is how fast can you do projects? So
yeah. And some people say, why would the builder sell it right now? Why would they sell it to you on opening day why would they not want to sell it slower? Because if KB Homes goes to sell, they're going to release 7 houses, and their next release, they're going to raise the price. Their next release is going to raise the price. The smaller construction projects would happen all over Texas, all over within 50 miles of Austin. They just don't have the same option. They've got 5 to 8 houses to sell. They want to move on to the next one. Mm-hmm. And they're just looking let's get this thing under contract rather than having 8 different homeowners. Now they have one. Makes it a little bit easier to track for them too. And their problem was, and the other really cool thing about buying a new home is you get to lock in a price today for something that isn't going to be done for 60 or 90 days. Yeah. In 90 days, I've had a few of these, and I bought a ton of these lately. We have either 60 or 80 duplexes that we have in escrow right now. So 120, 160 units that we're adding in the next 60 to 90 days. But we've had them in escrow for a couple months. Well, after we got them in escrow, construction prices went way up. Sales prices have gone up again. The day that we close on them, we will probably have, let's say 20 or 30,000 in equity on each unit. Plus we'll be able to get that cash flow that we were hoping, which isn't as good as the other cash flow, but we're still operating at a net 6 cap on most of them with the built-in equity.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Aaron, you have a ton of experience, obviously investing in the Austin area too. So you've done a lot of flips in Austin area and also California. Could you tell our listeners just something you look for that's caused you trouble in the past? So maybe a bad deal you had. I know you've done a ton of flips. So I know you've seen a ton of this, but something you've seen that you would tell everybody always to look out for. Hey, watch out for these foundation cracks, or watch out for this when you're doing your due diligence.
Yeah, the settlement cracks are a bigger deal in Austin than anywhere else in the world I've ever done business in. It used to be like you could buy something and it had a foundation issue and you're like, all right, I'll pay this foundation person $10,000 and they'll certify it and warranty it for a few years and it's not going to be bad anymore. Those are deal breakers for us now. And that's because we have six different properties that we bought. After we bought it, we did a foundation edit we did a foundation upgrade to them. We got a warranty from somebody. All 6 of them have sunk and had issues again.
Really?
And all 6 of those people that we went to go back on their warranty a couple years later are not in business. And their bond and the insurance they provided isn't going to pick up the bill. So we're doing this foundation leveling again. And so what we're learning is it's really hard. So there's no amount of money that I'll buy a house now if there is major foundation cracks on the inside or the outside. You can, I've seen people go put the golf ball on the ground and see it rolling in the house. Like that's a common thing out here to see if something's sinking or not. Like go to the edge of a house, put a golf ball on the ground in the corner of it. If it rolls to the other side of the house is slanted and probably not something that you want to worry about. So, but the biggest thing that, so that's with the house itself. But one thing that you have no control over that impacts values more than anything else is the neighbors. If you go in the backyard and the neighbors have a crazy dog that's trying to chew through the fence all the time, that's like crazy and scary, there's nothing you're going to be able to do to sell that house. There are certain things that kill a value, and it's less about the house itself and it's more about where the house is. If the house is next to a sewer treatment plant, I've had one of those. And thinking, I could put a $10,000 or $20,000 value and it changes it. No, there are some things that there's no value that makes it better. There's a house that we bought out in El Paso, and there were these giant dogs that were just ripping through the fence all the time. And every time you'd walk into the backyard, you would be like afraid for your life. Like if those dogs broke through, no one was going to buy that for any amount of money that we put. No one even wanted to rent it unless they had crazy giant dogs themselves, or they didn't have kids or families or anything else. So I would say the houses itself, like a lot of the foreclosure auctions we're buying, we're looking at them in 10 seconds. We're driving up to them because we're driving by 100 houses that day. We're going to look, is the HVAC system there? Is the roof there? Is there any settlement issues? And what's the kitchen look like? And if you know what the kitchen looks like and what the roof looks like and the HVAC system, you can get a pretty good guess of this house is going to spend, I'm going to spend $5,000, $10,000, $25,000 on fixing this thing up. So those are the main things that you can kind of create your own spreadsheet and go, if the kitchen's great or the kitchen's not. The kitchen's not, it's going to be between $5,000 and $20,000 depending on the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. But those are the things that we quickly look at. If I look at the age of a house and pictures of it and I see those 4 or 5 things, I can assess whether or not I want to buy it. If it's a foundation issue, it's an issue no matter what. But way more importantly that I think people don't talk about enough is who your neighbors are impacts the value more than anything else, or where the house is in the neighborhood. What's it back up to? What's across the street? Is there a major highway behind or next to it? And that makes pricing houses in downtown Austin really difficult as people start to look at, there's so much like rebuilding going on and there's so much like gentrification type stuff. And it makes it hard in some neighborhoods to be like, hey, this house is listed for 400,000 and this house is 4 houses away and it's selling for $1 million. Can I buy the $400,000 one and sell it for $1 million or not? And sometimes the answer is yes. Mm-hmm. Or sometimes it's like, well, no, when you're on this side of the road, instead it's this school. Or when you're on this side of the road, it's this school. Or no, when you're over here, you see this different or hear this different. Or no, this one is selling like that because of the neighbor or because of those other things. So in the areas where houses are like where I really like to focus is houses built in the last 20 years, because it's a lot easier to assess the value of something. When you go into some of those older neighborhoods, especially, in Austin, there's a lot of them where you start looking at houses built before 2000, comping what it's going to resell for becomes such a bigger guess. It's so much harder because there's some special things about some of those specialty neighborhoods. But if you're from Austin, you're an agent in Austin, you're an investor in Austin, if you find a special niche like that, you find a little neighborhood that you know in and out, like that becomes your advantage. Like buying foreclosures on the courthouse steps, that's my skill set. That's my advantage. I know I'm better at it than a lot of people. You may find that you're going to know more about a certain neighborhood than anybody else, and you've got an opportunity to figure out if that $400,000 house is worth it or not. Or condos. There's like some condo projects downtown that you could be like the same floor plan in the condo will sell for $700,000 or $2 million, depending on what floor or what corner of the building. So the way you figure that out is you got to be the guy that sells the building and knows it all. It's a lot tougher to be a guy going to invest in there and be like, well, why would this same floor plan sell for $2 million at 700? Why wouldn't I buy the 700? So specialty stuff is hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you talked about it's about your neighbors too. So I bought a house in East Austin back in 2018 and just had a bear of a time renting it. It was a rental because the neighbors sat across the street all day, drank, carried on, had 10 cars on the street, playing music real loud, just kind of scary to some of the younger people who are looking to move in. And, that kind of stuff can absolutely hurt you on both ends. If you're going to sell it or if you're going to rent it, you need to take that into consideration. So with the foundation, obviously you're just driving by these houses, you're not getting in them. What are you doing to assess the foundation from the exterior?
So a lot of times you could see some form of shifting or cracking from the outside, even if it's just really quickly like running around and looking at the outside. If there's a foundation problem, there's more than likely giant cracks in the brick facade if it's there, or you could see that there was a patching of it or a patching of the stucco. Small cracks are normal. They say if there's a crack that you can't fit a quarter in, it's normal. So some people will see these pretty big cracks, but if you can't fit a quarter inside it, you go, okay, it's not actually as bad as I think it is. But if you could fit a quarter in it, that's a major crack. That's a major structural issue. And so you can visually see a lot of that. Sometimes you'll see cracked windows if it's really, really bad, but most of the time you're going to see patches or cracks that you could fit a quarter inside of. Looking around the outside of the foundation, outside of the walls, you won't have especially like when I'm buying at auction, we're especially not going to see something that was recently patched, like really, really well. If you're buying something on MLS, it might be a little harder to determine that, but on MLS you can at least take the time to get an inspection to figure it out. Because if somebody's going to put it on MLS, they're going to patch that stuff first, and they're going to do a really good job at it. The nice thing about buying at auction when it comes to those things is people are not going to spend the $5,000 to patch some cracks when they're about to get their house foreclosed on. If you can fit a quarter inside the crack, it's too big. And for me, then I'm out.
Absolutely. That's great insight. And yeah, for everybody listening, when you are buying on the MLS, I do recommend getting a foundation inspection. It's only about $300. It's a non-biased person that's going to come by and tell you the actual condition of the foundation and not try to sell you some repairs. So great thing to do when you're inspecting the property. So Aaron, what's one thing you would tell newer investors here in the Austin area that are looking to get into, let's say, buying new builds outside of Austin, or just buy and hold in the area?
Yeah, that's the best advice I would say is you just got to go try it and you got to go do it. You make more money on the buy than you ever make on the sell, though, right? Like it just means that it's really, when I say just go do it, it's a tough time to buy a property right now because there's so many offers coming in. So if you're new at this, you're trying to find a spot, then I would try to find a spot where there's a little bit less competition. And the further out you get from Austin, the less competition there is. And you can still find some pretty darn good deals, because what will happen to those same buyers that can't buy in Austin right now that are getting outbid, 6 months from now, they're going to be spreading out to a little bit further. And so so I would say trying to find markets that aren't as competitive. If you're going to get into rentals, the newer type construction is great. Or if you're a really handy person, if someone wants to, the other extreme to that is if somebody has a lot of time on their hands, they're like, hey, I want to buy a house and I want to do all the work myself, and I've got time to really like do that. Then getting an older house at a deal, I think there's a lot of great opportunity for. But just getting started, making sure that you buy at the right price, because there's only so much you can do to make the house better. There's some places later, and then also when you're trying to look at values, make sure you look really closely at what spec levels are. You never want to end up with the house that's the most expensive one in the neighborhood, because they're a ceiling. House prices aren't linear, where if you can get a $200,000 house worth 200, a 2,000 square foot house worth 200,000, right? $100 a square foot. If you get up to 3,000 square feet, it's not going to be a $300,000 house. It's not a straight line. It's more like the old geometry MX plus B equation, right? So it goes in a straight line, but your 3,000 square foot house may be worth 250, even though your 2,000 square foot house is worth 200. And so making sure that you look at the pricing that's out there, and that you don't want to be the most expensive house in a neighborhood. So you don't want to have a 4,000 square foot house in a neighborhood full of 2,000 square foot houses. And you don't want to do something where you're like, well, if I do a really, really good job fixing this up, maybe I'll be able to sell for more than any other house in the neighborhood. I like being average. Find the house that's average, find the house that's the better value in the area, and then try to get started.
Hey guys, this is Jordan Moorhead here, and I wanted to ask if you could do a huge favor for me. If you could go leave a review for this podcast wherever you're listening to it, that would really help me get this into the hands of other people that are interested in information about Austin real estate investing, and I'd be able to help more people. Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. Love that advice. So for Austin, your general advice to people is look further out. I think that's my general advice too. Hey, you can find stuff that makes sense. It's probably just not within 15, 20 minutes of downtown.
Or areas where you're a specialist, right?
Yeah.
They're like, get further out, or an area that you just know really well. Like there are some people that like grew up in a certain neighborhood, and they can tell you like, no, the houses on that end of the block are so much cooler because in the morning they have this view, or at night they have it. There are certain things that knowing the inside track will definitely impact Austin value. So you either got to know a secret in a highly competitive area, or you got to go where there's less competition. And that's where you go further out. We listed houses for sale this week, and everything that we listed was, multiple offers, 5 offers, 10 offers, getting it. It is really, really crazy. And even though we're pricing them higher than anything else, so way too much competition to buy right now. So you got to know a secret to go somewhere where there's less.
Sure. Yeah. So I think, the advice is different. If you just moved here, look further out. If you grew up on the east side, and everybody in that neighborhood, you don't know everybody in every street, probably stick with that. But also, I think it matters a lot what your strategy is and what your strengths are. So if you're looking for buy and hold rentals, maybe you're looking further out. But if you're looking to flip, being in Austin might not be a bad thing.
Yeah. The other kind of funny thing right now is the market feels like it's still going up. I think that there's a way better chance that 6 months from now, a year from now, it's going to be better. So if you're just getting started in flipping, maybe buying a house in Austin and fixing it up yourself is there's a lot of room for error right now. I think it's going to make a lot of flippers look smart. If you accidentally take 2 months longer than you were going to, it's just the price, the house, this is bad advice in normal times, but it's tough to ignore it right now. So depending on when you're listening to this, I do not believe in betting on the come or betting on the future or betting on increases. But if you had a house right now go to market, or you have one that's not ready and it goes to market in 2 months, it will sell for more 2 months from now. So if you want to start flipping, getting into a place like Austin where the demand is really, really strong, there's going to be a lot of things that if you do them wrong and learn from them, the market's going to help you out more than it normally would.
Absolutely.
Like, wouldn't that be funny? Like you hire the wrong contractor, you overpay, it takes you an extra 4 months to bring it to market. And then you're like, holy cow, houses are selling for $50,000 more than they were 4 months ago in this neighborhood. And that we are seeing that. I had an offer from Open Door on a house. So I have a house that I own down in Buda, which is just not very far from Austin. It's like a 15-minute drive, right?
Yeah, not bad.
I bought it for two something. I bought it for 175 about 18 months ago. Then I tried to sell it to as a foreclosure auction. I tried to sell it to Open Door. They offered me 220 or 225 at the time. I said no. I kept it as a rental. They emailed me a month ago and said, "Hey, housing market's gone up. We'll offer you 405 or 406 now for that house." So 225 18 months ago, 405 now. I don't reply. I talk about it on my podcast. I put it on Instagram. And then again, like a week ago, they sent me another one and say, "Hey, we'll offer you 435 for that house right now." So in just a 2-month period, they went from 405 to 435. In 18 months, they went from 225 to 405. Like, that's stupid. That's like not a normal thing right now. So yeah, it'd be, maybe since I screwed up and didn't reply to my email, now their offer went up even higher if I want to sell it. So that's how weird the market is if you're within 20, 30 minutes of Austin right now.
Yeah, I think the market's just crazy in Austin. And I do think you're right. I believe inflation is going to hit us hard here soon. I have a buddy who sold a used car back to the dealership he bought it from for $5,000 more than he paid for it 6 months ago. And stuff like that just makes absolutely no sense to me. So, prices of everything are going up. Austin's a very desirable place to be. It's hard to wonder why the prices are going to go anywhere but up in the near future.
Yeah. Really, really funny times right now.
Yeah. Really interesting stuff. So Aaron, I know you just put out a book called Bidding to Buy, but what's your favorite business or mindset book that you like to read?
I haven't read it often, but the one that totally changed the way that I looked at money was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And even though it's been a lot of years, it is still the fundamental to the way that my brain shift happened and the way that I think about money and business and things like that. So I think most people have read it, but if you haven't, you got to read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. If it's mindset stuff, I'm also a big fan of The Miracle Morning and the 4-Hour Work Week. So those are two books that really changed my life and how I run my businesses. So, the Miracle Morning is about getting up early and doing some things that help you. Really, if you're your best health, if you're your healthiest and most on point, you're going to be more efficient in business. The 4-Hour Work Week talks to you about how to be more efficient in business. And so those are super, super helpful for non-real estate, but business related. Definitely my favorites. And then, on two cheesy plugs, my wife and I have a book called The 5-Hour School Week. We're big into unschooling and homeschooling, and we pulled our kids out of school a few years ago, started traveling. So if you're interested in some fun stuff like that, that's a great book. And our more recent one that you talked about, Bidding to Buy, and how to buy foreclosures on the courthouse steps. I think it is an epic real estate book. Now, I know I wrote it, right? But I put my heart and soul of all of my secrets into there, like how to comp houses in these tougher neighborhoods, like how to really dial that bid in to win, the stuff that has made me buy more houses than anybody else at auction. And so there's a couple of the chapters are pretty much only related to foreclosure auctions, but everything else, like figuring out how much to pay for a property, how much you're going to sell it for, how to rehab it, how to organize those teams. Like, it's a beginning to end thing. And the more things when we're getting on talking to people and giving them tips, I'm like going, here's a whole chapter of it. And I'm just wanting to send them chapters and saying, all of my secrets are right here. And we did a really, really good job at it. So I think it's a great real estate book for people, even if they don't do the 2 chapters on foreclosure.
Yeah, really enjoyed your book there too. And back to the Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and Miracle Morning, both of those are series too, where there's quite a few different variations. So if you love the Miracle Morning, there's numerous other Miracle Morning books you could pick up, and you're just going to see it from different perspectives. I think I've probably read 4 of them. The Rich Dad, Poor Dad series, I don't know how many books there are, but there's a lot. So if you like those books, dig in. There's more there. Yeah. So Aaron, I know your book's an awesome way to learn more about what you do. So Bidding to Buy, everybody should absolutely pick that up. Like Aaron said, even if you're not buying foreclosures off the courthouse steps, it's a great book and you're going to learn a lot. But what's another way people can get a hold of you, Aaron?
Yeah. So the way that people can reach out to me, there's a few, if people like email, then Aaron at FLS Online. It stands for Foreclosure Listing Service Online. So I own the company that if you're going to buy a foreclosure in Texas, you would buy essentially the list of foreclosures from us. It's called the Roddy Report or Foreclosure Listing Service. So that's my email, Aaron at FLS Online. I do a ton of stuff on Instagram right now. Like I'm researching the news, I'm researching concepts, I'm sharing and trying to provide value all day. And that's just my full name on Instagram, Aaron Amuchastegui. And I run a podcast. My podcast is called the Real Estate Rockstars. It's mostly for real estate agents that listen to it, but we talk everything real estate. Once a week, we do a real estate news show that talks about what's happening in the world and how it'll affect you. There's so many neat things that we're going to be doing on the show this week with real estate news because it's changing all the time. So email, Instagram, my podcast. I'd love to chat with any of you on any of those places.
Yeah, and absolutely, you should listen to that Real Estate Rockstars podcast. Like Aaron said, lots of data about the real estate market. I know you guys talk all about foreclosure, eviction moratoriums, what's going on day to day there. So great stuff to listen to there. And absolutely, check out the Roddy. It's a Roddy Report, correct?
Yeah, the Roddy Report. Some of the stuff we're going to be talking about in the podcast this week is like, they thought more people from New York were moving to Florida, but now they have stats changing that around. Resale houses are selling for more than new homes right now. So that's a stat that so like one of the things that we just talked about, like I'm finding that niche, I'm able to buy the new construction houses really because I'm buying them fast. The resales in the neighborhood are selling for more than the new construction because people can move into them right away. They don't want to wait. That's really interesting to me that resale. So we go into stuff like that on a weekly basis. We try to find the coolest articles and bring them to everybody.
Awesome. So with the resales, the new construction, are you finding that new construction in the same neighborhood as the resale is selling for less, or is it just new construction in different areas?
Yes, it's new construction. So the stats that they used on this report is it's new construction in the same areas, like neighborhoods, is selling for less than the resales for two reasons. One is the resale gets put on MLS the traditional way. It gets multiple offers because people want to move today. Mm-hmm. One of the things that has spawned the real estate market increase is people are spending so much time living at home. They need more space. They need something different, and they need it now. So the people that are buying right now have been waiting 14 months to buy since COVID started, right? Like people that are buying, they're like needing a change, and people want to do those changes so much faster. So at new homes, when you go sign up for them, usually you're booking it in for 3 months from now. Right? You're saying, all right, I'll give you my 5,000 or 10,000 and I'll move in 3 months from now. So people are willing to pay more to move in faster, but it's the first time ever, right? So those stats, first time ever that's been the case, that people will pay more for a resale than new home. That's how bad people want to give into houses. And I think the other thing is because of the way that the new homes are, because they do sell them, a few months before they're ready, they don't create the same bidding wars that normal stuff does, because it's not like there's no emergency. You don't feel this emergency need when a builder says, hey, I've got 9 of the same floor plan coming out next week. Or they're like, hey, we're going to release 9 of the same floor plan. You can move in 90 days. There's no sense of urgency. Mm-hmm. Those 9 buyers that would have been bidding for 1 aren't going to rush in. And then the key for me is then we just go buy all 9. Mm-hmm. So if we buy all 9, we get them for that price that was locked in. If they only released 1 house instead, those 9 buyers would have paid way more for it. But first time in history that's happening. It's fascinating.
Cool stuff. A little bit of speculation here. I know a lot of people are moving to bigger houses because of COVID. They're moving out of California and to Texas because of COVID. And again, this is just pure speculation. Do you think that people are going to continue to move out of California or one of those other areas when the restrictions get let down for COVID at the same rate that they are now? Obviously, people are going to keep coming. All these companies are moving here. There's a lot of reasons to move to Austin, but it seems like we've seen a surge during COVID.
If the politics of changes, I know a lot of people will move back to California.
Yeah.
Now there's still the big businesses are coming here to Austin, right? Yeah. So there's still going to be the things that are drawing them. The no taxes is a draw, like the no income taxes in Texas, but that's anywhere in Texas, right? So Austin gets to be a lot like California in the sense that big businesses want to come here. They have the infrastructure for big businesses. They're pro big business. And then also there's no income tax. So if someone was making, because a lot of the people working in some of those software companies, they're making $300,000 a year. Well, if they're living in Austin instead, that's a $30,000 or $40,000 a year raise just based on their California income tax rate. But it is in some of those other places that people are leaving. I mean, Florida may end up being the biggest winner because they've got kind of some great weather. They've got some great amenities and they've got relaxed, COVID restrictions. But most of the people I know that are moving out of California are resentful about it. They'll be like, there's no weather like what you have out in California. And they're feeling like they're getting forced to leave because of the politics. I mean, so when a year ago, so December, we moved our family. So 18 months ago, we moved out to Texas. We bought a new house in March out here. The day that Texas went was getting closed. We closed on this giant new house, but we were still going to live here half-time and half-time in Northern California. And I'm sorry. So then there's a bunch of Austin listeners. As soon as I say I lived in California, they're going to hate me and stop listening. So I am apologizing in advance because I got out here by accident and I love it. But when I bought this home, our plan was live 6 months in Austin, 6 months in Northern California. And then COVID hit and all of our favorite restaurants are out of business or still closed out in California. Still now, 14 months later, 13 months later, we went out there in August. So instead of splitting time, we didn't make it out there until August of 2020. When we got there, our church was closed, our favorite restaurants were closed, and there was just smoke and craziness everywhere from these recent fires. And we were like, all right, let's sell our house. So, but we were bummed about it. We were frustrated. So it's a really good question. No one's asked me that. I do think that if politics change, you're going to see a different sort of shift again, maybe to other places. Politics are important with where people live. I think we've seen that more this year than ever before. That one thing that could change prices faster than anything else is politics. And there's even some politics in Austin right now that there are some areas of town that are increasing or decreasing home values based on, public camping and things like that. There's a lot of stuff going. There's some people whose house, there's a lot of homeless camping right outside their house. Their value has gone down. And if a measure gets voted into where all of a sudden they can't camp in front of their front yard anymore, well, now their home values will go back up. So politics affect housing and where people want to live way more now than they ever did 3 or 4 years ago.
Absolutely. And by the time this podcast is published, we'll find out if the Proposition B here in Austin gets voted up, yes, and camping becomes illegal again. So yeah, we'll find a lot out here real soon.
It's a great example of politics that changes property values. Like that alone will change property values a lot depending on which way it goes.
Oh yeah. There's areas of Austin that have been devastated by just enormous campsites right in front of them. And these campsites are very elaborate. There's not just a tent or two. There's couches, there's cars. We've seen all sorts of stuff. Bookshelves where people have their own little storage set up under the overpass.
It's intense. It's very innovative. It's very intense. It is. They are these wild communities. But it's also under overpasses is one thing. It's also downtown. It's also along the river. It's also in some of the most premium real estate in Austin. So they'll be curious to see what happens.
Absolutely. Awesome, Aaron. Last question here. Most important question we ask. What is your favorite restaurant here in Austin?
Favorite restaurant. So one that I got introduced to is called Sway. And so I think a lot of people, there's 2 different locations for it. There's one up in the Domain, one over by my house. And what type of food do they call that? Super unique, super spicy. When my wife and I eat there, we're like, there's nothing quite like this. So let me see how they describe modern Thai. So award-winning Thai restaurants. There are a few places in Austin, super unique stuff that I had never had before. So we end up going there at least once a month. Now, if you ask my kids, they would say Salt Lick is by far their favorite. So they would go eat at the Salt Lick every week if they could for barbecue.
Sway's got some really interesting big old tables inside too. That was the first time in COVID I felt like I'm eating across from somebody else.
Yeah, it's an amazing place.
Absolutely. All right, Aaron, thank you so much for coming on here today. Everybody, again, go out and check out Bidding to Buy, check out the Roddy Report, and check out Real Estate Rockstars. You're going to love it.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.